The Other Side by Aimee Liu. Cherie had just finished reading when she felt the man's gaze settle over her. He'd arrived late, but elderly elegant. Turned out in creamy white linen, he gleamed among the collectors, who tended to favor denim and shirt sleeves and heavy brown paper shopping bags. This old man held nothing. He stood behind the last row, backlit by bookstore fluorescence, and chewed his white mustache as he watched with intensity, like a prick of conscience. An Armani-clad Santa, Cherie thought, buoyed by the polite applause, including his, that followed her remarks, out to gauge whether she'd been naughty or nice. She could have made it easy for him. Not naughty enough. The notion nearly made her laugh out loud. Her days as a renegade were so far behind her, she could hardly remember where she'd been bad. She'd tried, just this morning, to locate the scenes of what once passed for her youthful misbehavior. There had been many, uptown and downtown bars alike, and Bowery lofts and West End pool halls, and the other side, of course. But either her old haunts had vanished into unrecognizable middle age, or they'd been reincarnated into other species altogether, a pocket park, say, or a skyscraper shaped like a ski slope. This was her first time back in more than 20 years, and the city had altered even more than she had. There. The dapper old man was edging away now, had merely been marking time before his dinner date. Cherie Moore's relative naughtiness or niceness was her concern, not his. She sat down, began smiling and signing with emphasis, just her name, please, and thanked each collector in turn for prizing her work, as if it were some fine literary wine that might actually improve with age. These slim little volumes of Larceny and Murder in Paradise, her editor's brilliant catchphrase 3 titles back, had indeed caught and held, corkscrewing her into bestsellerdom. Paradise being the south of France, and Larceny and Murder being 2 of the more worthwhile products of Cherie's repressed naughtiness. It was all perfectly frivolous and light, or would be, if not for her annual book tours to sell the latest title across the states. Invariably on these tours, there turned up among the collectors certain other characters, lurking and eyeing and muttering, sometimes leaning too close and smelling too bad. Once following her to the parking garage before bursting into song, "Hello, Dolly." It took her weeks to shed the refrain. Cherie used these stalkers in her books, only translating them into madmen of Provence. Bonnard gone berserk, as she thought of them, supplied a certain edginess that had become her trademark. They served as incidental victims. Rien, her heroine, Marie Noire, would say, exiting the morgue. This penchant for stalkers was why she'd taken note of the man in white, though he clearly was nobody's victim. Nor had he disappeared. As the line shortened, Cherie was surprised and intrigued to see that he'd returned, had in fact taken the last position. So upright, polished, and manicured. He looked as if he'd never before set foot in a Barnes & Noble. Rizzoli, possibly, Harrods, of course, but a connoisseur is no mere collector. And yet when he finally stepped to the front, the inelegance of his words and voice jarred her. "I heard you before I even got to the top of the escalator," You still sound the same." So did he. The growl lodged in the back of his throat before rolling forth into a mumble. His lips barely moved. She remembered once he confessed to her, as a child he had stuttered, and the nun slapped him raw. Frank? The transformation confounded her, though a closer look told her the only significant change was the color of his hair and suit. He had shrunk a bit, but his broomstick carriage offset that, and his eyes had lost none of their glittery green. The gray mote lurked like a secret, low in the left retina only. You had to know to look for it. Now that she recognized him, she couldn't imagine how she had not recognized him, except that age was like that. She stood and stretched across the table, dipping awkwardly to meet him. His beard still scratched as they kissed, and she almost recognized his cologne, only it smelled both too expensive and emphatic for recall. "My God," she said. He smiled. "Nah, we just look alike." She shook her head, embarrassed and perplexed by the exasperation that immediately followed. There had always been that disconnect. He owned 5-star restaurants overlooking Manhattan, but favored anatomical slang like jugs and nuts and screw. Though as a good Catholic he never swore, he'd once drawn her head down into his lap to give him a blowjob behind the wheel as he drove the Long Island Expressway. He handed her a book. "Sign it, Cherie, for old times." She sat down, ignoring his request. Paul Simon piped from the loudspeakers, diamonds on the soles of her shoes. "I was up there this morning." One of those urban transmogrifications. Delilah's Diner from the other side. "We closed," he said. "Finally." "I guess so." She scowled at him, thinking, irrationally uncomfortable as he lowered one hip onto the table edge, rearranged the drape of his trouser. His clothes never fell to the floor. To make sure, he always undressed himself, complete with hang and fold. He took care of his belongings ahead of passion. Only once, the last time, had the urge overcome him. She'd chopped off her hair, cleared out her apartment, was leaving for Paris the following morning, and stopped to return his key. He'd been napping, came to the door disheveled, and with a single motion yanked her inside. When she left 15 minutes later, his clothing lay clumped along the hallway like deflated Jim Dine sculptures. That was the last time she'd seen him until tonight. "I heard you had a new place," she said. "Several, actually. Successes." "Like you." He smiled appraisingly behind his beard. "Naughty or nice?" "Did you take anybody with you?" "Some." She fingered her pen. She would have to write something in his book, for old times. But how had he found her? Of course, there were ads, notices. Was this why she had not been back in 20 years? "AIDS got Eddie." She looked up, startled. Her eyes were shining. "That doesn't make sense." Eddie had gotten married just weeks before she left. Back then, they were waitresses, busboys, cooks, bartenders. They'd traveled by chartered bus across the river and into the Catskills. A fat woman named Aimee hooted, "Aimees!" and broke poppers under unsuspecting noses. Accordion music played at the wedding as the amyl nitrate blew the backs of their skulls off, and Eddie danced with his new 5-year-old stepdaughter, his hair a crown of yellow curls, the girl giggling uncontrollably as she tripped over his loafers. Eddie the Teddy, women at the bar called him. Cherie remembered Hannah, Eddie's wife. She sold baby clothes at Saks. "Wife number 2 of 4, said Frank, who hadn't attended the wedding. But everybody loved Eddie. He shrugged. And apparently Eddie loved everybody. AIDS. She swallowed hard. For months after Ryan broke her hand, the first words out of Eddie's mouth when he saw her were, "How's the paw?" She too loved him, but he didn't know. Eddie's loyalty to his best friend, it seemed, surpassed his fidelity to his wives. Never once did he hit on her. He knew the hand was an accident. Ryan couldn't tell his own strength. The Barnes & Noble customer relations manager, a narrow woman with a lustrous red permanent and a rose tattoo sneaking out from under her sleeve, hovered alongside the signing table. "Everything okay?" she said, eyeing Frank. Cherie frowned. "Fine." "You'll sign the stock?" The CRM patted the unsold stacks of books. "I already flapped to the title page for you." She was chewing dentine. This smell of America struck Cherie sequentially as foreign, forgotten, familiar. "The Other Side," the CRM read off the jacket. "Good title." "Fine," Cherie said again. "Thanks," and waited as the woman edged away. Frank glanced at the cover image, a drawing after Cézanne, of a sun-drenched river with 3 figures shadowed beneath a plane tree on the distant bank. He rubbed one forefinger across it, as if to change the screen. His other side had been a pun. Instead of slaw and hash browns, Frank served velvet beets, water chestnuts, yellow carrots, arugula and balsamic before New York ever heard of Alice Waters. In more than one way, he taught Cherie the value of exotic edibles. He asked, "Want dinner?" She felt her cheeks redden. It's funny, she reminded herself. This meeting is absurd. How many times had he taken her out? 15, 20 maybe, all told. His other girls he showed off more. At 22, Cherie was already his older woman, filler only, while Beau or Peep, or whatever his real girlfriend's name had been, spent the summer modeling in Europe. Frank was then 39. Still, he did trot her around. Le Cirque, the River Café, Nicola's, Manhattan's then temples of trend. "You've got a beautiful body," he said one glittery summer midnight as he drove her back to her sublet downtown. A quarter-century had taken care of that body. It would never be the Four Seasons tonight. "My husband's waiting at the hotel," she lied, adding quickly, "You never married?" "Nope." His eyes danced, as if this were his little joke. "Always the best man, never the groom." She opened his book to the title page. In the too white light of this cavernous room, the black print seemed to drill down through the paper. She stared at the dark recesses of her made-up name, as if waiting for something, or someone, to pop out. "Ryan was killed by a hooker," he said, and the air left her. "I found him. His own apartment. He'd closed up Sunday night, had about $2,000 on him from the late shift. I came by in the morning to pick it up. The door was unlocked. She stabbed him with his Swiss Army knife." He patted his beard with fingertips, as if it were pasted felt. "You love this," she thought. Her ribs ached. No tears. Ryan had been the Matus man. She'd fallen for his freckles, the coppery sheen of his hair, his optimism. He filled his days with acting lessons, commercial auditions, photo shoots, spent his nights with Eddie behind the bar. 2 boys from Toronto. She met Ryan in a studio in Chelsea when she was giving up. He took her down to his room on Hudson Street with its red bordello curtains, and they made love to the Moody Blues with the radiator clanking. He kept the radio on when he left the apartment because he worried about break-ins, and to keep his cats company. Her modeling days were finished. A degree in art history had cost her the prime of one career and prepared her for no other. She loathed the pretentiousness of the gallery scene and balked at academia. That left her broke, in need of a job. Ryan, who hadn't gone to college but had more plans than she ever would, took her up to the other side and introduced her to Frank, who asked how soon she could start. "How long ago?" she asked. He lifted one shoulder. 3 years. The side's days were already numbered. They caught the girl right away. Marked bills. We got scammed in a money laundering ring in the 80s. I stopped taking chances. Last thing Ryan did before leaving each night. Wound up nailing his own killer. He breathed in sharply and straightened his spine. For $2,000. The plans had shifted. She sat alone in a car in the dark in Jersey City while he scored. His radio broke. He borrowed hers. Then that, too, disappeared. He cried when he figured out she was doing more than waiting tables for Frank. He grabbed her hand and broke 3 bones before realizing he'd hurt her. "You're not with him anymore." Frank had called her into the restaurant's cramped back office. He'd seen Ryan's eyes as she walked past the bar. He wanted to give her fair warning. "You're going out with me. You see strangers, that's your business. But not my employees and not my friends." "I'm just the filler while your girlfriend's gone," she reminded him, feeling the dinge and dust from the stacks of liquor boxes and account books like plaque between her teeth. "All the more reason. Take it or leave it." That morning Ryan had slept until noon, having been high until 5. Frank sipped expensive wine. He wore designer clothes. He didn't do drugs, would never marry, and probably had a net worth of several million. He would take care of Ryan, give him a place to work until he self-destructed, but he would never share a woman with him, no matter how little that woman meant to him or how much to Ryan. No risk either way with a hooker. Rien. That Matus commercial was Ryan's high point. She felt a chill cradle her heart. Ryan was not the last fragile man she had broken, and she knew she could not blame that all on Frank. "I'm sorry." "Why? Think you could have changed things for him?" "No, just the opposite." Frank's knee creaked as he stretched his leg and slid off the table. The air stirred, and now she identified the distinct sense of starch and silk and Bulgari. But as carefully as these had been layered, they could not disguise the underlying rankness of his flesh. She looked down and inscribed his name and the date, then turned the pen in her hand. She measured the space that remained to be filled. "From Cherie," she wrote finally, still searching for the other side.